JMU routes Coastal Carolina. It's Locked On Sunbelt.
You are Locked On Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. 1-1 on the night. We'll get into that later on. All right, we'll talk, obviously, JMU with a 39-7 ball game. Victory over Coastal Carolina ball game that was not very close after it was 7-7. Texas State hosting Arkansas State and Marshall. Can they stay hot against Georgia Southern? Those are the only two ball games that have two teams with winning records going against each other. We'll, of course, talk the Cajuns along with they're playing App, and then ULM is hosting a Southern Miss. So let's talk about this JMU beating Coastal Carolina. Very impressive first half. All right, I know the game started off with a fumble, but other than that, a really impressive first half for JMU offensively and defensively. I mean, the numbers overall, right? These are kind of pedestrian numbers outside of the 3 touchdowns. Alonzo Barnett, the third, 16 out of 20, 199 yards and 3 touchdowns. And it was a 29-7 ball game at half. The big play was the interception return for a touchdown by Lloyd Summerall the third. Really did a good job of picking off a screen pass from Ethan Vasco. And I thought I was on my way to getting the over, but it didn't quite work out that way. Again, statistically, good numbers for JMU, right? I mean, 6 out of 14 on a third down is pretty good. 1 out of 2 on fourth down. They had over 400 yards. They only gave up 181. That's really impressive. All right, so defensively, JMU was really good. They did run it for 222 yards. I actually looked up. They actually run the ball more than I thought they did. They held the ball almost, 40 minutes to, 20 minutes, 39-21. It was a really completely dominating victory without a lot of the points that some of us may have needed in the second half. And you did get some backups in there, although Barnett, the third, went the distance. Noah Kim came in for Vasco, and Kyrie Duplessis also came in. George Petway with a nice game on the ground, 13 carries, 89 yards. Wayne Knight also 43 yards on 6 carries. Barnett did push his way into the end zone in, I think, the first half. He had 5 carries and 13 yards. Again, a solid victory. I mean, that's about as dominating a victory. I guess I'm looking for more points because they didn't put up a whole lot of points in the second half. But, Coastal Carolina didn't threaten. Ethan Vasco, this is why we're not sure what Coastal Carolina is. I was honored to go on the Sunbelt Syndicate show, and TJ had Coastal Carolina number 2. Now I get to talk out of both sides of my mouth. I'm all about winning and moving on, and they were 4-1, but they hadn't beaten anybody yet. They had a nice win over Jacksonville State. Not going to take that away from them. And we're finding out Jacksonville State is a little bit better than they were when they played Coastal Carolina. But other than that, they got to win over William and Mary. They got to win over Temple, and they got to win and move on, if you will, over Old Dominion. They lost to Virginia badly. So we don't know about Coastal Carolina, although maybe we do. We know more about them. Also, we got to talk about, JMU. We talked about not losing the same game twice. And though they did fumble on the first possession, they came back, got a stop, scored on the next possession, and then eventually, Coastal Carolina tied the ball game up on a nice pump fake from Vasco, hit his receiver down the right side of the field. down the sidelines, but that was it. I mean, how often was Coastal Carolina in JMU territory tonight? Let me see if we can see that, because I just don't think it was all that much. Again, they gave up less than 190 yards. So there's 3 plays and out, and they punted. Then they had the 5-play touchdown drive, 6 plays and punted, and they punted from the Coastal 32. They had the touchdown for interception for a touchdown, then 3 and out, then 4 and out. They did get it into JMU territory, although there was a Coastal Carolina punt, or a Coastal Carolina penalty, so they had to back it up a little bit. They were not in JMU territory a lot at all. 3 and out to begin the second half. Throws another interception. 3 and out. 8 plays, 13 yards. Yeah, that was, I would say, as efficient as Barnett and Petway was, or Petaway was, that the defense was even better. That was, so when it's a dominating performance and it's the defense, sometimes it doesn't show up, although they did get a defensive score and got a second interception, although they didn't take advantage of that. So it's a nice job by JMU. You got to give credit where credit is due. They did not play well last week, win or lose, and they lost. And they came out, and I guess a little bit of a shaky start, but usually you see a lot of teams score on their first possession. In this case, Coastal Carolina scored on their second possession. So did JMU, as it turns out. And then, the defense took over, and they went for 2. That was interesting. Then they went for, beginning of the third quarter, they went for it on a 4th and 4. James Madison did this, and we'll hear what Bob Chesney has to say about that. Because is it running it up? I'm going to say no. All right, let me see. I want to make sure we get this, because that was, it says 4th and goal at the 3. I thought they said it was 4th and 4 on TV. So 4th and goal at the 3. There's a lot of people who don't think that's running up the score, because it's 29-7. You kick a chippy field goal. You're giving is this going to sound odd? I don't know. You're giving the defense a chance to get off the field is the point. As and Barnett made a good play. He ran to his right, stopped, actually, kind of threw it back across his body, although more like straight ahead, but he was rolling to his right, stopped, threw it a little bit back to his left. But in this case, if you kick a field goal, you really can't do anything about that. That's going to be 3 more points. I'm giving you the chance. JMU is giving Coastal Carolina the chance to get off the field without giving up points. Although in this case, it turned out to be points for JMU. Does that make any sense? It sounds a little bit ridiculous, but I know I've heard that before. Usually when it's at the end of the ball game and you have backups in, and instead of kicking a field goal, which is an automatic 3, you give the defense a chance to get off the field. Although I'm not sure that's what JMU was thinking, per se. I don't know. We'll have to see what Bob Chesney says. There are situations you need to practice in a ball game that you don't, that you can't simulate it in practice. And so you got a chance to do it somewhere along the way. JMU may need to score on a 4th and goal inside the 5-yard line when there's much more on the line than when they were leading 29-7. Nonetheless, very impressive bounce back victory from JMU. Maybe even much more impressive defensively than offensively. Offensively scored a grand total of 10 points in the second half. And, Coastal was just not very good tonight, and that had a lot to do with JMU. All right, so JMU with a big win. They get their first win in the Sunbelt. They do improve, should be to 5-1, right? Yep, 5-1 overall, 1-1 in the Sunbelt. Let's see where these guys go next week. They get Southern Miss at home. Oh no, they're at Georgia Southern. Huge ball game. That could be for Sunbelt East supremacy. Huge ball game. Let's see where Coastal goes. Coastal hosts the Cajuns, and that'll be a big ball game as well. All right, let's take a timeout. We'll start previewing more so of the rest of the action in the Sunbelt. Texas State hosting Arkansas State. A lot on the line there in the Sunbelt West. We'll do that right after I tell you about Z-Biotics and FanDuel. Z-Biotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. Here's how to use it. Drink pre-alcohol. For best results, make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, pace yourself, hydrate, and get a good night's sleep. And then enjoy tomorrow. Wake up feeling refreshed and ready to take on the day. Go to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Locked On College at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with 100% money-back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege and use the code LockedOnCollege at checkout for 15% off. And FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Ended up taking JMU. I was going to take him at 10. Got down to 7.5. Where'd that come from? Had to check to see if Barnett was playing, and I took the over. It was looking good, and it went sideways. Instead of being 36-7 at half, and it just went. It did not go my way for them. So we're 1-1 on the week. Oh well, I could have cashed out at $38, and I didn't. My bad. 1-1 on the week so far. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Let's check out the rest of the Sunbelt action. Cajuns with a big ball game at home. And this may go along the lines of why Marshall was favored by 2.5 over Georgia Southern. And it hit me maybe when I was helping out, when I hopped on the Sunbelt Syndicate live quote Manicast show during the ball game last night. Because Marshall had such an impressive win over App State. The Cajuns are 10.5-point favorites over App State. They should be more. Shouldn't be 20, but it probably should be 2 touchdowns. App State has not played well this year. Not for the most part at all. Kind of a workmanlike win over ETSU. Did not play well against Clemson. Did hang on against South Carolina. They were embarrassed at home against South Alabama. Had the game canceled against Liberty because of the storm. And then, got routed by Marshall 52-7. Marshall's had all kinds of issues putting points up on the board. All right. Cajuns coming off a lackluster offensive performance, but really good defensive performance. Was it Cam Whitfield, like a National Defensive Player of the Year or National Defensive Player of the Week with his 4 sacks against Southern Miss? Defensively, they were really good. App State is going to have to work to stay in this ball game. All right. Cajuns are going to have to cash in and get touchdowns instead of field goals. I don't think this game is going to be very close. This kind of could be the statement game for the Cajuns in the Sunbelt. They had a huge win to hang on against Wake Forest. Got a little lucky, right? Went doink. Got a little lucky. Took care of business against Southern Miss and, have a statement game against App State. It is it on TV or is it just, maybe it's just ESPN Plus. I think it's just ESPN Plus. Next week's game for the Cajuns against Coastal is on ESPNU. So it'll be interesting to see if the Cajuns come out and play a little sharper, right? I mean, they were really good offensively against Wake. I don't think Wake's that good, but the Cajuns were explosive against Wake and not so much against Southern Miss. They were not very sharp against Southern Miss offensively. They were pretty good against Wake. So we'll see what happens this one. It is just on ESPN Plus, but this could be a Sunbelt statement game for the Ragin Cajuns. And because Marshall routed App State, basically they haven't figured out App State yet. Vegas, if you will. They're giving App State too much credit as of right now. So Marshall hammers App State. They're like, well, if they can beat App State, they can, be favored against Georgia Southern. App State's really good. And so they're going in the Cajuns. They're a 10-point favorite, 10.5-point favorite. The Cajuns are instead of like 13 or 14. All right. Again, I'm not sitting here thinking it should be 20, although don't be surprised if the Cajuns end up putting that up on the board. All right. This could be a big rout. We'll see. All right. I'll be impressed if App State, again, it has been a tough go of it with the Storm and then Marshall and trying to recruit and trying to get things back to normal. All of that's true. Doesn't change the fact you got to play a game on Saturday and you got to play it against one of the best teams in the Sun Belt. And the Cajuns may be one of those teams. They may have like a JMU performance where they're pretty good offensively and dominating defensively. That's what that could be, because the Cajuns are good at defense as they are. And, that's with one of their main guys, Cortland Flowers, being kicked off the team because of his off-field issues. So it kind of took me a little bit to figure out why Marshall was favored, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But because they haven't caught on to App not being quite as good, Marshall's getting a ton of credit for beating App, and they think App can give the Cajuns a little bit of a game. I'd be shocked without turnovers being part of the deal. All right, Dave Schultz, Lockdown Sunbelt, your team every day. We will we'll get to Marshall and Georgia Southern later. So let's do Texas State. I guess I meant to do that first. Oh, well. Texas State taking on Arkansas State. This has what was basically the East showdown, now is in the West. All right. And you have two teams that, Texas State played an uneven game against Troy. Nice win. I don't think they played particularly well. And Arkansas State did what they had to do against South Alabama. The more I started talking to these guys, and Texas State is favored by 14 points, I kind of like Texas State in this ballgame, and I think they're going to cover. I'm not sure Arkansas State is going to be able to put up the points that Texas State will. The question is, does Texas State finish it off? All right. Also, this was a huge rout last year, and I think Texas State was reminded about that consistently. All right. If they have the chance to run it up, they will. Now, some of the running it up last year was special teams and turnovers. Can't really change much of that. But still, anytime you allow 77 points, however that goes on the scoreboard, you're going to remember it. And so, and Arkansas State, although they've won 3 close ball games, right? We're not taking credit away for not having impressive wins, because they have not had an impressive win yet. All right. Although you may consider South Alabama an impressive win, all 3 of those games could have been losses. We give Jalen Rayner credit for that because all 3 of them were win, right? Central Arkansas, Tulsa, and South Alabama, all 3 of them could have been losses. We're going to forget the Michigan and the Iowa State games. We're going to forget that. All right. Never mind those games. but they could have lost all three of those other ball games, and they didn't. So that's impressive to me. All right. They haven't played necessarily all that well in those games, but they have been there to win those. They don't have these huge, big wins, but in terms of score and score differential. So I am impressed with that, but I think Texas State's a different animal. Last year was in Jonesboro. This year's in San Marcos. I think Texas State's going to rout Arkansas State. I'm not sure Arkansas State can keep up with Texas State. I will say it depends how often G.J. Kinney wants to go for it on fourth down inside his own 25-yard line. All right. If that starts to happen again, I can't help that. I just cannot help that. All right. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We will do the rest of the Sun Belt. We still have Georgia State, Old Dominion, Marshall, Georgia Southern, and Monroe against Southern Miss. We'll do that after I tell you about Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash, receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses, and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhoodgold.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. That's investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. All right, Dave Schultz, Lockdown Sunbelt, your team every day. Again, 1-1, had the JMU, got it at 7.5, and that was easy. The over looked like it was going to be easy, and then it wasn't. So we went 1-1 on the day. All right, let's talk about this Marshall Georgia Southern ball game. Again, Marshall coming off, really impressive win with those points, 52-37. And we'll see who the quarterback is, right? That's a big question. Braylon Braxton, 8 out of 14, 129 yards, 3 touchdowns in the air, 15 carries, 140 yards, and 2 touchdowns on the ground. App did put up some points and some yards. They actually outgained Marshall, 473-365. The difference in the ball game, the big difference in the game. First of all, Marshall rushed for 236 yards. Ouch. And, oh, goodness. I mean, App State had 15 penalties for 158 yards plus 2 turnovers. App actually held the ball for like 11 and a half minutes more, 35 and a half minutes to 24 and a half minutes. So App kind of shot themselves in the foot numerous times over and over again in that ball game. But nonetheless, Marshall with that 52-37 ball game. Let's check out the play-by-play. Was this game ever close? Was actually App led it 10-7. All right. No, not right. Oh, yeah, 10-7. All right. And then interception touchdown. So pick 6 by Jacorian Anderson from Joey Aguilar, and a 14-10 ball game went to 21-10. Missed field goal turns into a touchdown for Marshall eventually. It's 28-10, 28-17, 35-17, 38-17, 45-24. Yeah, they got as close as 45-31. So that pick 6 kind of turned the game on that one last week. And then Marshall is coming off a bye week, by the way, and they played very well in Atlanta against Georgia Southern. We'll try that again. Georgia Southern played in Atlanta very well against Georgia State. And that game wasn't particularly close either. 38-21, and Georgia State never really in it. It was 14-7, Georgia Southern end of 1, and it was 24-7 at the at halftime. Georgia State actually got a couple. They got within 3. They made it 24-21. So they made a little bit of a run in the third quarter, but end up losing by 17 points. So Georgia Southern is hosting Marshall, and I'm going to take Georgia Southern in this one. I'm again a little bit surprised that they're favored, but we went over that. They're underdogs. It was 2.5. It is now 1.5 against Marshall. That's 8 p.m. Eastern time, ESPNU. So that's nice. All right, and it is still about it is 1.5. Georgia Southern. Again, here's the other thing. All right. Marshall is 2-6 in their last 8 road games. Or no, I'm sorry, 1-6 in their last 8 road games. 1-6 in their last 7 road games. 2 of them are Virginia Tech and Ohio State. So that's kind of rough. But they haven't been very good on the road. Georgia Southern is like 10-4 at home with Clay Helton. So I would, and one of them is Boise this year. So I'm going to take Georgia Southern in this ball game. Should be a good one. All right. And we'll find out who is it going to be, Earl, or is it going to be Braylon Braxton as your quarterbacks? All right. Let's see what else we got here. It is Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Georgia State is hosting Old Dominion. I think I got ahead of myself. I don't know why I did that. I thought they had already played those 5 ball games, but this is the 5th ball game. Again, we are in the middle of October, and Georgia State, forget about leaving the state. They haven't left the city of Atlanta. They need to win this football game. They need to be 3-2 after this game. They need this game. We'll see what Colton Joseph does for Old Dominion if Grant Wilson is still out. Old Dominion, we've talked about that, coulda, shoulda, woulda, all season long. This could be the same outcome as that, but Georgia State needs to win this football game. This is a very winnable football game for Georgia State, and there is a huge difference between going 3-2 and 2-3 or 1-1 in the Sunbelt or 0-2. Huge difference. All right, so Georgia State's got to win that ball game. That's also 3:30 ESPN plus. And then what you don't want if you're Monroe, cannot have a letdown. They're getting Southern Miss, an odd time, 4 p.m. Central. It's on ESPN plus. Monroe is favored by 6.5. The only concern I have about that is, do they score enough points? Because, they could win 16-10. ULM is offensively challenged. Aiden Armenta is making his second consecutive start, 3rd game in a row, where he'll play a lot. I would expect Monroe to win this ball game. Again, last week, Southern Miss snake bit a little bit. They ran a great fake punt, and the lineman did hold the Cajun defender, so it was the right call. I don't think he did have to hold him. I think if he just turned his hips and got in the way a little bit, the punter would have gotten a first down, maybe not as big as gain as he ended up getting, but it was called back. And then the Cajuns tackled the Southern Miss running back coming out of the backfield, and no call was happening. The call, or lack thereof, happened right in front of Will Hall. So a couple of bad plays went against Southern Miss, and that's why ULM always plays that kind of dangerous football, because although they do have a few wins with the score differential is a lot, right? They hammered Jackson State 30-14. They beat BYU 32-6. Their last 2 ball games, both in the Sunbelt, Troy and James Madison, are a total of 5 points differential. So if I could add 6 points differential, all right, 13-9 and 21-19. So 6 points differential. My understanding is that there would be no math. So, can ULM get some offense going to where they do win 24-10, and it's a little cushier with those 6.5 points. I think ULM wins. I'd probably stay away from it, but they are so good defensively, and Southern Miss struggles offensively. This is in Monroe. The Monroe defense is probably just as good, or maybe even a little bit better than the Cajuns defensively, although I guess statistically the Cajuns are a little bit better, probably because Texas is in there for Monroe, so that's going to skew some statistics. But Monroe needs to win this football game. All right. If you lose this football game to a team that you're better than at home, it's one step up, two steps back. All right. You end up losing to Texas State and the Cajuns. That's disappointing. Those teams are either better than you or at least on your level. You're better than Southern Miss. All right. And so you need to win the football game. All right. You should win the football game. All right. And that'll do it for this week's episodes of Locked On Sunbelt. Again, we're almost at 1,550. I think we're at 1,545 subscribers. Really appreciate it. Another record week of views. Again, the shorts are paying off. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Should have a great weekend of football, and we'll see who steps up. JMU stepped up on Thursday night. We'll see if the Cajuns step up against App. We'll see who hits it against Georgia Southern and Marshall, and we'll see who takes a step towards the West title between Texas State and Arkansas State. So should be a great weekend of football. Also, need to start talking some basketball. We'll see if we can get some coaches on. I do have 2 days off next week, Tuesday and Wednesday. That makes it a little bit easier so these guys can hop on and we start previewing a little basketball instead of maybe a whole show, maybe just one segment or maybe two segments. But it is what it is. We got to start talking basketball as well. All right. Again, thanks so much. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the football. I'm Dave Schultz. You've been watching and listening to Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day.